Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today on the Happy Farm Bee podcast. My name is Chris Bakley, and I'm your host. Have you ever contemplated beginning your own side business or side hustle while being a full-time pharmacist? I know the thought definitely runs, across many other pharmacists' minds, and exactly how one is to begin that process, and is it worth it, and even what would you even do a side business on, pharmacy related or not pharmacy related? How would one begin that process, and where to go from there? I'm sure many people out there have possibly already began their own side hustles, or have contemplated the thought and would love to hear more. Well, today exactly I have that for you. Our episode is going to focus with pharmacist Brittany Hoffman-Eubanks, who is a full-time pharmacist but also has her own side business. Without any delay, I'd love to jump right into the interview. So I'd love to welcome Ms. Brittany Hoffman-Eubanks today to the podcast. Hello out there, and thank you for joining me on the Happy Farm Bee podcast. This is Chris Bakley, and I'm your host. Before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to make a special announcement to everyone out there. We are offering free access to a webinar for everyone out there that is interested. It is our Career Masterclass. This will primarily help focus on how to escape burnout, get your job offers regularly, and to finally take control of your career. Please feel free to sign up on our link to secure and register for a spot, and it is free. The link is thehappyfarmd.com/begin. Again, that is thehappyfarmd.com/begin. Feel free to check it out and sign up again for your free spot for this class. Thank you so much, guys, and let's go to the show. Good morning to you. Good afternoon here, technically. So we'll start with just provide us with a little information about yourself and where you went to school, where you're from, and we'll go from there.
Well, thanks for having me. I went to Drake University College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences in Des Moines, Iowa. So I like to joke that it's the other pharmacy school in Iowa. But I joke, but we have a really good relationship between the two colleges of pharmacy there. And I think actually that was a big part in learning about pharmacy advocacy, which is a big part of my life now in general. So I'm grateful for that time. But graduated from Drake with my PharmD and MBA. So I did the dual degree program there. Okay. And after pharmacy school, I went on to do a postgraduate year one residency in community pharmacy. That was also affiliated with a local large retail drugstore in the Chicagoland area, as well as Midwestern College of Pharmacy here in Downers Grove. So during my residency year, it was really nice. I got to immerse myself in patient care, spend a full year just learning about all the different point of care tests and how to take care of a patient from start to finish, so to speak, helping them adjust their medication, typical internal medicine topics that you see in the community setting, as well as about the business of pharmacy. And so that year was really helpful for me, just allowed me to really utilize that MBA degree, learn about how to run a business, how to keep the doors open so that we can take care of our patients at the end of the day. I'm from the Chicagoland area, so we have a lot of pharmacy deserts on the south side where I'm from. I'm in the far south suburbs, and actually my current practice site is in an underserved area as well. So it's just, an issue that's on the forefront of access to care, especially right now, that I think is just really contributed to where I am now with having my own business and being a medical writer, just trying to help patients at the end of the day get the best outcomes that they can. That's kind of a short little synopsis of what I've done, but we can talk more about my business as it is now, but it started in the beginning kind of as a side hustle, way to make some extra money to pay off those student loans, because we all know that student loan debt is crushing.
All too well.
And I felt that, as well as I love to travel internationally. So it was a way for me to kind of tick both of those boxes outside of my 9-to-5 day job.
Awesome. Okay. Well, yeah, you definitely have a very long, the CV has a lot of experience on it when I was going over it the other night. So yeah, I guess we could start with, so when you graduated pharmacy, I saw that you did the PGY1. How did you feel that kind of shaped where you went from there with your career, or did you always know you wanted to do a side hustle? Let's start with that.
Yeah, no. So the side hustle happened completely by accident, which is, something I think that typically surprises people when I talk about, where I am now. When I was in pharmacy school, I think, very early on, I knew that I wanted to do a residency afterwards. And I feel like a residency is a very personal decision. I work with students all the time now, and I tell them, you don't have to do a residency, and it's okay if you don't. It's not for everybody. But the one thing that I very strongly feel like is that in that year, you're never ever going to have another time in your life where more people are invested in you and your professional development. And I think that was very helpful for me. It gave me, they equated to about 3 to 5 years of experience and practice. And it's real. I mean, you're doing 80 hours per week. You are busy, and it's a lot going on. But it was very helpful for me just to figure out what kind of pharmacist I wanted to be, what I wanted to do in terms of practice, feeling comfortable taking care of patients, just that extra step from going from being in school to practitioner. So that was very helpful. And as a result of that, one of the processes, or I guess one of the requirements rather, that we were asked to do in our residency year was to write a CE. And, I grew up with a grandmother who was a librarian and a teacher. So writing was always very big in my household, but never, outside of some of the projects that I did as in undergrad and in pharmacy school with research, I wasn't really writing that type of medical communications. So I loved the process, got some really good feedback from the preceptor who was in charge of the project. And, just kind of a light bulb went off of, how could I do more of this? I really enjoyed it. Is there opportunities out there? How do I figure out, if this is something that I could potentially do? And the funny thing is that I didn't start right away with it after writing that CE. There was a good 3-year gap between doing my residency and actually writing my first project, as I call them. That time was just me immersing myself into pharmacy, of being a practitioner after residency, just learning about, I took on a pharmacy manager role. I took on 10 to 12 clinical stores as a clinical pharmacist, in addition to being in the community setting on a full-time basis, and just dove into people leadership and how do I, figure out the type of practitioner I'm going to be. And I think that time was actually very important for me. It's really helped me have a voice as a writer and be able to write the medical communication, the different projects that we do now, in a way that help satisfy practitioners' learning, as well as ultimately taking care of our patients, because that's the end goal at the end of the day. My business is absolutely a business to business. However, at the end of the day, what I do ultimately affects patients, because it's creating essentially education for healthcare practitioners to better take care of their patients.
Absolutely. So I definitely want to dive into the side hustle or business now, but the beginning of a side hustle that turned into your business. But before we do that, because I know you said you got your MBA as well, and I actually had all my roommates did that as well when I graduated in 2015, but they all were doing it in the meantime. And I remember it being a lot of extra work, but I think probably worth it. Most of them would agree. And I'm sure you would too. Have you found that you've used that a lot? I mean, I'm sure you have with starting your own business, but prior to starting your own business, because you had that 3-year gap, would you recommend a lot of people to do that dual degree? Or I guess, what are your thoughts on it after, post getting that degree?
Yeah, there's pros and cons to the decision. And I think you have to figure out what the additional degree is going to do for you, right? So I did the MBA kind of backwards. Drake offered it as a dual program, which is great. But most people who get their MBA spend time in their business or whatever field that they're in first, and then go back and do the MBA degree. And there's a reason for that. When, me coming out of pharmacy school with my MBA, yes, I had the didactic, components, the background information, but I didn't necessarily have the experience to apply that right away. And it's funny because that question came up actually during my residency interviews, and I just was very flat out with them. I don't have the application piece yet, but I have the background to be able to, go ahead and apply that. So to answer your question, I think, in any education that we do, there has to be a return on investment, or there should be, right?
Yeah.
You're spending extra money, you're spending extra time. What's the opportunity cost of that? And those are things now that are very important to me, and I think came from getting that MBA degree, to be able to understand that. And so if you look into it, you decide, okay, what is the MBA degree going to do for me? And if you think that it's going to generate positive outcomes, then absolutely 100% do it. And I think that's with any type of extra education, board certification, whatever, you choose to do in life with that. It needs to make sense, and financially especially, because you're putting extra debt out there for yourself.
Yeah.
But with regard to my business, I mean, absolutely, there's things that, having done the MBA degree has been very helpful. And there's things that the MBA degree helps with nothing at all with business too, right? So, but it's not something I regret. And I think it's absolutely helped me as a pharmacy manager be able to look at, a profit and loss statement, be able to understand that information, utilize it, and not only that, but explain it to my staff, right? Of this is how, this is affecting this is playing a part in the business decisions that are happening. So there's very practical applications from having done the degree. Is it necessary? Absolutely not. You can definitely learn those things on your own. But I knew for me that I wanted to have that additional background just because, we can take care of our patients, but if we can't keep our doors open, it doesn't
Great
really
way to look at it. No,
right?
I love that analogy. That's great. And I really like how you said with the PGY1 with the residency that it was almost like a huge investment in you, which I haven't really heard anyone word it that way. I really like that. I myself did not do a residency. I was more kind of wanted the jump on the train of paying off my loans as quick as possible, which is going to be still a long time. But I kind of was like, that was my mindset where why would I, take the risk of making less money, I guess, for I guess just a year or two. But at that time, you see that big number and you want to just get that number down as quick as possible. But I think that's definitely a good question a lot of new upcoming pharmacists have of, hey, like, should I, do that? Should I try to work right away, start my own business, get an additional degree? So that's really cool that you have, all that on your resume and a lot of good information about it. And before we jump into your business, I wanted to quickly just touch on, so where did coaching come into play?
So the coaching came into play because I felt like I had gotten myself to a point where I was either going to, it's kind of in a fork in the road, right? I was either going to go to the next level or I was going to keep it just as a side hustle and maybe scale back and, take projects that I like. But I was getting to the point where I was so busy that I had to make a decision on what I was going to do. And I think, having the background that I do was helpful, but you can kind of get stuck in your own comfort zone, right? So the coaching for me was very helpful just in helping me think outside of the box, getting over some of those fears that you go through as an entrepreneur of what if I make this decision or what if I make this decision, just kind of that analysis paralysis, so to speak. And I think, with working with Alex, that's been super helpful. I mean, I've said this before that, the biggest regret I have about coaching is not doing it sooner, because the return was just, it was night and day. I mean, I took my business from where I was and tripled it within the first 6 months. And that was an amazing thing to see. And it wouldn't have happened without the coaching. So that's how it started. I was nervous at first about it, but working with Alex has been it's been great for Banner Medical, and we're now friends and have some other exciting projects coming up. So it's been a great process and relationship.
Was there, I guess, what was that final hurdle you had to cross or hop over to decide to get a coaching? Because you said your biggest regret was not doing it sooner. So what kind of, and I actually also needed that push to go to coaching. So what was it that held you back? Whether was it fear, doubt, or the cost, or just all the above, or something else?
I didn't really have fear. I think when I first came across the coaching as an opportunity, I was like, this is kind of weird. Like, people hire coaches for their business. And, and Alex and I have talked about this at length, and now it's, just kind of a funny joke between us. But, I'm sure he gets that all the time too, that people don't realize the value in that. Just like as, pharmacists, people don't often realize the value of pharmacists, right? So
that's correct.
Thinking about things in a different way. And I thought, okay, well, we have coaches for sports teams and, a variety of other things that we do in our lives. Why wouldn't it make sense then to have one, for a coach or for a business? At the end of the day, for me, it was just coming down to, okay, so I get the the premise of having to spend money to make money,
Mhm.
but what is the return on the investment really going to be? And I think I just had to take a leap of faith. We got along really well. He seemed like he was really interested in my business and helping me, in addition to just being a check on the box of, okay, here's another coaching individual for my business. So that was really important to me. Our interactions felt like we really clicked. He was interested in helping me succeed and get to where I needed to be, which was important for me to make that final decision of feeling comfortable to spend the money for coaching.
Couldn't agree more. It was a very similar story for me. I honestly didn't even know there was such thing as a pharmacy career coach. I mean, my wife has her own business, so I've heard of a career coach, but I never knew that they were, specific in the field of pharmacy. I had not heard that before, and I was like, really? Like, what can they help me with? But couldn't agree more. I really was happy that I made that choice, and I'm sure you are too. And then following that, so you said you kind of tripled your business in around 6 months or so. Quickly, do you full-time work as a pharmacy manager and do your business, or do you have a split, or how do you make that work?
Yeah, so right now I'm a little crazy. I'm doing both. So
Okay.
I don't have children. I have fur babies, so it makes life a little bit easier.
Okay.
And I have an incredibly supportive husband, because without him, it would never happen. He never gives me a hard time. My biggest supporter, which makes it a lot easier. But yes, I do work full time as a pharmacist right now. I do kind of a dual role of pharmacy manager as well as a clinical pharmacist. So I see patients in our community pharmacy as well. And then I also have my business, which is no longer side hustle, but full hustle
Okay.
on top of it. So I probably do easily around 80 hours per week right now.
Wow.
But the pay now will help later once everything's established and things are good. And it's been exciting. I have a team of pharmacists now that work with me. We're continuing to expand. So eventually later on, once things are fully in place and it'll go down, it won't be nearly as intense.
Yeah. 80 hours is definitely a lot, but I mean, you have to invest to get where you want to be. So I totally understand that. So let's segue into, so what exactly is your well, not anymore side business, your actual business? What is it? Give it a little explanation about it, how you came to, I know you said you had the history in childhood as being more interested in reading, and I think you said your grandmother was a librarian, so you kind of were raised that way. So I think that kind of probably played a role in that. But give us a little information on what exactly your business is, how you got into that, and where it is today.
I have a medical communications company, which, when I first started, I just kind of called myself a freelance medical writer, and everybody would always be like, what is that? To this day, still probably the first question that I, get on a regular basis. So in its simplest description, it's all writing about medicine or communications about medicine. And we're fortunate enough to not only write for pharmacists, which is what I started out with and when I first began my side hustle, but also now write for all healthcare practitioners. So we write for physicians, non-physician clinicians like physician assistants, nurse practitioners, really just kind of a wide scope now in terms of what we're doing. So the bulk of my business really has three key areas. We do continuing medical education. We also do editorial and some blog writing. And then we have the academic scientific area, which could be publication for journals. We help out with NAPLEX test prep, just kind of a wide variety. I'd say the engine of the business right now is in that CME component, and have really, I guess, created somewhat of a niche for myself in creating educational needs assessments, which are basically a justification document for why a company should give grant money to put on a continuing education. So as pharmacists, we all have to do, CE every year, and we usually want the ones that don't cost money, right? We don't want to have to pay any extra if we don't have to, which I get, but those CEs don't just come out of nowhere. There's a whole process to create them, and to be able to make them available at no charge for healthcare providers, you typically need grant funds for that. So that's kind of the short synopsis, I guess, of what BannerMed does and, what we focus on now. We're continuing to grow, so we're building up those other two key areas, the editorial, blog writing, scientific area, and then, adding on additional CME projects in various areas.
That's awesome. I never knew that continuing education component in terms of like needing a grant to be able to offer it for free. I mean, that makes perfect sense. I guess I never thought of it that way. I myself, I like to do the ones online if I can. But it is something about being in person is also much better. You just get much more out of it, I feel like. But so I guess, and now you said you have 3 or 4 pharmacists working for you. Okay.
Yeah, I have a team of 3 right now in addition to myself. Yeah.
Very good. So you kind of delegate, or do you still feel like you're doing a lot of the work as well as from when you started, I guess?
It's a mixture. So I have one of my staff right now is at full medical writer status. So I'm able to give her projects and she takes it from start to finish. And I really more of just the QA process, the quality control with those, which is great. And that's something that's still really important to me with my business is that I'm able to go through and look at every single project before it goes to the client, just to ensure that quality is there, all the pieces are there that are needed. And I think that's something that really sets my company apart maybe from others is that, our first draft is always going to be the last draft. They're not going to have to spend hours and hours redoing our work. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's really important if you're going to be a medical writer, especially, is to make sure that you have that quality piece there. And that's the number one thing that clients complain about. And then I have 2 other pharmacists that have recently joined the company, and right now they're in medical writing assistants is their role. So they're learning the process of becoming a medical writer, and I do a lot more hands-on training with them specifically to get them to the medical writer role that they want to inevitably be.
Gotcha. That's awesome. I mean, that's I create these awesome opportunities for other pharmacists as well, and not only for yourself. That's so cool, and for other companies. Now, I wanted to quickly kind of still staying on this topic, but kind of go back from where you started when you graduated. You kind of had the idea and the formation of this plan for a side hustle that turned into a business, and then to forming it, and now to actually having the business grow and seeing it continue to grow each day. How has as a pharmacist or in home life, how has your lifestyle like changed? Has it become more hectic? Has it become, you feel more in control and more relaxed? I guess, how is it in terms of everyday life? How has it changed for you?
Well, I'm definitely a lot busier now. I
It
feel
sounds like it.
yeah. So it's somewhat of a difficult question to answer, right? Like me coming home and doing my business it doesn't feel like work for me, so to speak. I love it so much, and I love the challenge of writing for different providers and helping to shape content and tell that story that the clients are really looking for. So, but the reality of it is that I'm very busy, and there are sacrifices that have to be made as a result of being an entrepreneur and having your own business. I would be lying to everyone if I said, every day is great and, it's not hard at all. I mean, there are difficult moments for
Of
sure.
course, yeah.
And I think, just having a good support system is really helpful to get you through those. Having a coach that can kind of help you work through those roadblocks has been very helpful for me. And just, retaining some work-life balance, right? I mean, I have a husband, like I can't, ignore him all the time for the business. So, for me, what's been helpful is just kind of scheduling my time and really sticking to that. So if I say, hey, Friday evening, we're gonna go for dinner and have, just some time for my husband and I, sticking to that and not saying, oh, sorry, something came up. I can't go for dinner anymore. It's not fair to him, and it's not fair to anyone in your life that you're still, trying to have a, I guess, productive relationship with, right? So I think that's been the most helpful for me. And that was a skill actually I developed in residency when things were just kind of like, wow, I'm working 80 hours a week. My family's complaining because they're never seeing me. We have a really close, tight-knit family. So dinners were always important. I was like, okay, I need to figure out a way to make this work, and scheduling my time was really helpful for that. And I think
That's a
that's
really good plan. Yeah.
the biggest thing I do now that's really, really helpful. I'm that typical pharmacist that color codes things in her calendar, and I hate being late. And so, you got to find what works for you and just stick with it. That's the biggest thing.
Of course. Well, I feel like, especially, I mean, you sound very busy, and I know we all are. We all have a lot going on, not only career-wise, family-wise, relationship-wise, everything. And you kind of, took on another business, so you added on double the work. But you can always make it work, and it's great that you don't feel like it's always work. You truly found something you enjoy, and I don't know if ultimately the goal is to maybe transition to that full-time and maybe do part-time pharmacy, or it sounds like you said you like to travel as well. I do too. So I know a lot of people would love to be able to do, more things like that and not just be working, but more of a life work balance. But in terms of pharmacists now, which is a big issue going on now, is pharmacy burnout, which I myself experienced it. How do you feel like in terms of what would be the first steps in terms of starting your own side hustle that turned into a business? How did you kind of begin that process if someone is kind of struggling with where they are right now and they may not like what they're doing pharmacy wise and still want to be in that field, but maybe they have an idea that they want to pursue, but it's definitely scary to transition to that. And it's not something you can just overnight be like, hey, I'm going to do this full time. We all have student loans and bills have to be paid. So I guess, how did you, transition to that while still being a full-time pharmacist?
Yeah, the golden handcuffs are for real. And I get that. It can be scary to try something new, to not know the process of, what do I do next? How do I figure it out? And I think the biggest thing that I see, especially among new prospective entrepreneurs, is that, they just, and I don't want to generalize either. It's not everyone, but it's a common theme that I see of, I just need to do something else and I don't care what it is. So I'm going to do whatever I could possibly think of. Right. And because of that, there isn't really a focus. And I think that comes across, and oftentimes they don't end up being successful from that approach. So then they get discouraged, which just cycles the whole burnout, upset, fear, failure, shame. So the biggest advice that I think I have is to figure out how you can solve somebody else's problem. Okay. And if you can figure that out and you have a way of doing that, then that's your business, because you need to have someone that wants your services and whatever it is that you choose to do. So if you have a huge interest in, let's say, HIV, and there's a potential clinic in the area and you are up on all things with PrEP and the newest, latest guidelines, et cetera, how do you go and then, say to someone, okay, I have this idea, this seems to be a problem that I'm seeing all the time, and this is how I can solve that. People don't know enough about PrEP, and I want to create XYZ in order to, generate additional information about that. And you just never know what happens. Oftentimes you can start with something small, and it can lead to, bigger and better things. That's kind of what happened with me. My first project that I wrote came from reaching out to a colleague that I used to work with and saying, hey, how do you generate your content? I'm really interested in this. We've worked together before. And, how do I get involved? And, telling her specifically how I could solve her problems, not just asking for help, but, letting her know what I could do for them to fix that. And I think that's the biggest thing. You have to have that focus. You need to think about it and really come from a point that's going to help somebody else out, and not just from the selfish aspect of like me type of scenario. And it's hard. I get it. When you're in that burnout phase and you're desperate and you feel, like the world's caving in on you and I can't do this for another second, it can be hard. But I think you have to make the choice to, okay, this isn't working, but I need to find things that really matter to me and that I like and that I enjoy. And I think, for me, I love pharmacy advocacy. So I'm super involved with my state pharmacy organization on the board of directors, and, really just work hard to help improve the practice of pharmacy, and especially for pharmacists and technicians in the state where I live. And that's what gives me that joy. So when I have that really difficult day and patients are yelling at me, or, doctors are yelling at me, whomever it is, community pharmacy life,
Yeah, all
Um,
too well.
it doesn't depend on my job, right? My job isn't where I get all of my worth from. There's
Correct.
other things that I enjoy that I, bring into my life to create that and to spark that creativity. So I know it's a long-winded answer to the
No, it
question that
was
you asked
a
me,
great
but
answer.
I think, we just get too bogged down in what's making us feel negative instead of focusing on the other positive things around us that we could, maybe turn into something else.
True, true. I mean, I feel like when you get to that stage where you feel so stuck, like you said, you can't take another minute of this or second of this job or position you're in. You almost feel like your feet have cement bricks, on them, and you're just stuck and you don't know what to do, and whatever comes up in front of you, you're willing to take, just grab it. But I think that's great advice to solve someone else's problem. Like you've had some really good phrases today that I love, and I definitely want to use later. But no, I want to thank you so much for your time, and I really hope this helps other pharmacists who maybe don't know what they want to do in terms of right now, or even developing pharmacists coming out of school right to the field, and maybe they can even pursue coaching early on and not wait like both you and I did, and get it right away so they can kind of steer their career in the direction they want to go. But thank you so much. This has been awesome. Really good advice. Any last words for any pharmacists out there that you wanted to share?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. I love working with student pharmacists in general. It's probably one of my favorite parts of being a pharmacist. So, absolutely reach out to me, have questions, concerns. I'm generally pretty good at responding. So, I'm happy to help out with that. But I just say, find what makes you happy and find what brings you joy. And if you can make a business out of that on top of it, then you're set.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today on the Happy PharmD podcast. A lot of great information today, especially in terms of focusing on potentially starting your own side business or side hustle on top of what you're currently already doing. I felt like some really helpful information in terms of determining what your possible side hustle could be. Figuring out what another person's problem and solving it for them, that could be your business. I really thought that was really helpful information in terms of there's always something, especially reaching out to other professionals, asking, what do you need help with? And then determining, well, is that something that I might be able to find an easier way to do, or offer a quicker, more efficient service for them. And that could honestly turn into your side business. It could be something you never thought of before. And until you realize and reach out to others, it never hurts to ask. You might find something that you never thought before would be something you'd be interested in, or something that you could offer. It never hurts to reach out to others, explaining how you can help them to fix something once you do determine what that side business could be. And at the end of the day, you just want to determine what makes you happy. That's all that matters. And in terms of lifestyle and professionally, you want to be happy at the end of the day and not stressed out, and you want to enjoy what you do. So I hope today's information was helpful. Please feel free to go to our website at thehappypharmd.com to get some more resources. We have some free courses. Also, if you're interested in potentially reaching out to us for coaching, we have a lot of references there as well. You can just reach out and speak with one of us to get more information. And please subscribe to the Happy PharmD podcast. We really would love to get some more information. If you have any questions, please reach out to us as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.